I must admit I was a bit surprised when the Jets ended up taking Leonard Williams with the sixth overall pick of this year's NFL draft. Now I wasn't surprised because I didn't think he deserved to be picked number 6 overall. That's absolutely far from the truth. He was the best defensive player in the entire draft class, and very arguably he was the best player overall. There's many teams that had him at the top of their draft chart, and there's plenty of analysts who had him there too. I was surprised for two reasons. First is because I didn't think he was ever going to get to the Jets into the sixth pick. All throughout the entire draft, and there's thought that he's going to go second to the Titans if they decided to keep their pick and not take Mariota, or he would go third to the Jaguars, and that's what I thought. I thought he was going to go second or third, that he would be the first non-quarterback taken in this year's draft. Well, when the Jaguars ended up taking Dante Fowler and the Raiders took Amari Cooper, I was sure that the Redskins were going to take Williams, but they surprised us all and took the lineman out of Iowa. So there the Jets were. They're sitting on the clock with the sixth pick. They could either take Leonard Williams, who's the best player on the board, who's arguably the best player overall, but yet he still played one of the position that the Jets are the strongest at on their defensive line. They could have taken Kevin White, who's an incredible prospect with a very, very high ceiling, but at wide receiver, or they could have traded back. I thought they were going to end up trading back because my opinion was they didn't take Amari Cooper or Dante Fowler, two players that match their the best player available with one of their needs. Then I thought they ended up trade back, acquiring more picks. Well, Mike McCagnon was open to trades. They waited until the very last second, and that trade never came about. Nobody offered him anything that was worthy of a player of Leonard Williams. So they did the only thing they had to do, the only choice they had, and they took Williams 6 overall. The Jets now have the best defensive line in football. They're already a top 5 team, top 5 defensive line after last season. With Muhammad Wilkerson and Sheldon Richardson and Damon Harrison up front, it's an incredible unit. Now you add in Leonard Williams, who's one of the best talents in this year's draft, and he's one of the best prospects to come out in recent years, and it's scary how good that unit can be, let alone their defense. Now, as you see from the intro to Williams' highlight tape that I'm showing you right here, that I'm about to show you, their opinions that prospects and analysts and people in the know in college football and NFL, they have very high opinions of him. They think that he could end up being a truly great player.
Start with the star on defense for USC. Maybe a guy's going to be taken first overall in the NFL draft.
The star on the field. I know we like to talk about quarterbacks, but Leonard Williams, when you start looking at him, you start thinking about names like Ndamukong Suh. You start thinking about Richard Seymour.
Now, it's unfair to put any lofty comparisons on Leonard Williams and compare him to great players like Richard Seymour or Ndamukong Suh, or even one NFC scout said this offseason, said, I'm not going to call him Reggie White, but he's going to be the real deal. The mere fact that he would even mention Reggie White when talking about Leonard Williams just lets you know how great of a player and how much talent and how high his ceiling really is. He's only at 20 years of age. He's going to turn 21 in June. He's still an extremely raw player that's still learning the position, which when you think about it is really scary. The fact that he's this good, that he was the best defensive player in this draft, that he was arguably the best player overall in this draft, and he's still learning. He's still finding out how to really play the game and how to play his position. It's just mind-blowing to think about the kind of potential that he could eventually someday realize. And when you look at that, it makes perfect sense why they had to take him. Now, during his time at USC, he put up great numbers in terms of sacks and tackles for a loss. And he did it by beating offensive linemen with a wide array of moves. He has incredible techniques on how to get into the backfield. He can beat a lineman with a spin move, with a swim move, with a regular outside speed rush, and on top of that, he can bull rush a lineman right back into the quarterback to make sure him the one actually making the sack, or right back into their running back and knock him over. It's just the size and speed that he has. That combination is absolutely mind-blowing. For somebody who weighs at least 295 pounds to be able to move and as quickly as he can, it's just out of this real. It's a once in a lifetime, not once in a lifetime, but it's a next level kind of talent athleticism wise. And if he can realize and put his put his moves and get coached up well and put it all together, there's really no telling how great of a player he can be down the road. Now, he does have some weaknesses. He tends to fire out of his snap. He's not very quick firing out of his snap off the ball, getting out of his stance, which is something he's going to need to work on, that reaction timing. But there's plenty of tricks that the Jets defensive line coaches are going to be able to impart on him that Muhammad Wilkerson and Sheldon Richardson are going to be able to tell him about. It's something that I've no doubt that he's going to be able to improve upon. Another thing he needs to get better at is he needs to get better at being able to transition from trying to stop the run into rushing the passer when the quarterback ends up dropping back and he's not expecting it. That's something that it's only, I have to imagine, he's only get better with time, but he's got to get better. He needs to improve that part of his game. And one third thing that he could do to start to make himself an even better player is he has all these moves at his disposal, but he really just has relied upon his athleticism to get into the backfield and beat offensive linemen. If he can find a way to start game planning how he's going to attack the person trying to block him, then he's truly going to be unstoppable. For instance, the way he can do this, if, say, he bull rushes him 2, 3, 4 times in a row, and then the offensive line is going to start to get lulled to sleep. He's going to dig his feet in, expecting that yet again, Williams is going to try to run right over him. And that's when you hit him with a speed move. That's when you try to beat him onto the outside with a quick rush. Or that's when you take a hard step outside and do an inside spin move and get right by him. Or do the same thing with a spin move to the outside. Once he can start planning his point of attack and having him be the dictate how he's going to try and get past the blocker, as opposed to letting how the lineman's trying to stop him determine how he's what move he's going to use. That's what's going to separate him from being a very good player to possibly being a truly great player. So if he can start doing that, things are looking very bright for the future. As for the Jets defense, they're now going to have, on the offensive front, they're now going to have 4 great defensive linemen that they can rotate in and out. It's going to keep them fresher, which is going to allow them, like Muhammad Wilkerson and Sheldon Richardson, to have better legs, to be going harder and stronger, not only at the end of games, but in December. The past few years, Muhammad Wilkerson, he's put up very good numbers, but there's been a big discrepancy between the stats he's been putting up in the first half of the year as opposed to in December. And that's because he's been getting worn down by playing almost every single defensive snap for the Jets. With the addition of Williams, he's no longer going to have to do that. He's going to be playing less, which is going to allow him to play harder, even harder when he's on the field, which should send his numbers skyrocketing, and his performance is only going to improve as far as I can see. As for this talk about the Jets trading Wilkerson, I'm not going to come out and say that there's no chance that Wilkerson is going to get shipped out of town, because there's a price that can be had that can be found for trading any player. But having said that, it's going to have to be a huge offer for Mike McCagnon to send him out of town. It's just not a smart decision to ship out a 25-year-old player who's only getting better every single year, who's already one of the best players at his position in the entire world. Let alone the fact that he's a fan favorite, that he's out from New Jersey, that he said in the past that he wants to be a Jet for his life. That's just not a smart decision. That's not a smart business decision. So if Wilkerson's not going to be on the Jets next year, this upcoming season, it's going to be because they got a massive offer with 1 or 2 first-round draft picks, as well as a player, an already NFL-proven player, possibly a quarterback or an offensive lineman that can come in and play right away and make a huge difference. And really, the only quarterback that I could see possibly getting traded in that situation would be Phillip Rivers, and I don't think that's going to happen. So really, Muhammad Wilkerson is going to be a Jet next season. It's what's going to happen. Now, moving on from last night's first round selection into tonight with the second round and the third round, this is how I see things going. I think with the Jets' 5th pick of the second round, there's 3 players that they're going to go with. Personally, right now, I like to see them take Jalen Strong, a wide receiver out of Arizona State. I think that while he doesn't have one particular part of his game that's absolutely he excels at, he's just a very good all-around player. Giving him the chance for him to come in and learn from Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker and have time to develop and not be forced to be a premier target in a team's offense, I think he could grow into being a great wide receiver, one of the best the Jets have ever drafted. So that's how I would like to see. Ideally, that's how I would like to see happen. The other two players that I think it's going to go with, if it's not Jalen Strong, I want to see the Jets draft Eli Harold, outside linebacker out of Virginia. He has some flaws to his game. He's a little bit small. He'd have to bulk up in order to become a full all-around great outside linebacker, but he's a dynamic pass rusher. He explodes out off the snap, and he gets in the backfield, contorting his body so that the offensive linemen have a very small target to try to block him. He has a phenomenal nose for the ball, and if you could add him at outside linebacker, the speed rusher that the Jets haven't had for years now, if you add him and Leonard Williams to this defense in the same draft, it's mind-blowing how good the Jets defense could be. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around how good they're going to be, even with just the addition of Leonard Williams. If you add in a speedy outside linebacker to rush the passer from the linebacker position, standing up, that's the one thing that this defense is really lacking right now. You add that, I mean, I don't want to make any ridiculous lofty comparisons, but that could be an all-time great defense. As for the third round, the player I want to see the Jets take is quarterback Bryce Petty out of Baylor. I think he's better than Garrett Grayson. He's the guy I want. Let him sit behind Geno Smith and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and then he'll be right when he comes in and he has to play a few years down the road. I think he's going to be the real deal. Check back later this week for an update and breakdown of the middle rounds and also the later round picks on Saturday.